Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode Psycho's Platters, episode 92. That's right, everybody. We're going to just do a little bit of mishmash. Always powered by coffee, which was sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. Hey, it is worth the trip. So, this is part dos of the 70s suitcase find from last week's story. If you didn't hear last week's story, go back to episode 91 and listen to what I'm talking about. This is continued, part 2, and there will be a part 3 of this. All right, next thing up here, one of my favorite blues harmonica players. He's been in Northwest Arkansas a couple times. Delbert McClinton, that's right. I keep missing him every time he comes out into the area here. This one here on Capricorn Records from 1979, Keeper of the Flame. I heard this is a really, really good album. This one and the one that I picked up, you go 2 years forward, Delbert McClinton, The Jealous Kind, on Capitol Records from 1981. Both of them pretty much you had your Muscle Shoals rhythm sections, which were on a lot of records in the late 60s, the 70s, the 80s. You have to tip your hat to the Muscle Shoals people, the Swamp Dogs. That's what Skinner called them in Sweet Home Alabama. It was the Swamp Dogs, and they helped create the sounds of that era from a lot of bands. If I remember correctly, those ones were also produced by Johnny Sandlin. Johnny Sandlin, of course, had ties to Capricorn Records and also Allman Brothers involvement in the 60s and 70s. All right, this one here, don't knock these guys, because you know what? They're kind of good. Orleans Let There Be Music from 1975. This was their first album on Elektra Asylum, okay? These guys here, they were a tight outfit. This is the one that happened to have Dance With Me. This was their first big hit. And of course, they'd end up going to do Still the One and a few other ones. They got their start in the early 70s. Go figure, there's a huge fan base for them still in Japan. This is when I found out. John Hall, who's one of the main members, ended up doing 2 terms as in the House of Representatives for the state of New York, and then after that jumped back into the band. Currently, they're still together, of course. 2 original members, John Hall and the bass player as well. Also, of course, he, in the late 70s, he also cut some solo albums. This one here being Power, off of a Columbia Records subsidiary. No extra people, just your basic, really good session players. Okay, this one, I had found an album from them before, but I didn't have this one. On RSO Records from 1980, The Rockets with No Ballads. Now, if you're asking who's The Rockets, certain people like, Ronnie Dark are going to know who The Rockets are because he's played them on his Wax Museum show. But the Rockets were actually formed in the early 1970s. There's the front, there's the back, by former members of Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. You're talking about Jim McCarty and Johnny B. Badnajek. And I can't pronounce that. Also, Dave Gilbert, who was the lead singer of this band, was also the lead singer in 1971 for Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes. Go figure. So he jumps from that to this. They cut a few albums in general. Broke up in the early 80s, got themselves back together in the 10s. You're down basically to Johnny B, the drummer, and a whole new band. They did cut a new EP in late 13, so go to try to find that. I'd be kind of curious about that too. Remember I showed you last episode a Tom Johnston album from the 70s. This one here is Tom Johnston. I can barely read this. Still Feels Good. Yeah, from 1981 on Warner. Your basic suspects here. You still have a few members of the Doobies. You do have a couple members of Rufus, Shaka Khan's band, and Red Rhodes, steel guitar country legend, shows up on a song or two on this album also. All right, this one, really, really cool, I thought. I'm still looking for the album that he did before this let me show you this album, and then I'll tell you why I'm looking for that one too. Okay. From 1979, Felix Cavalier's Castles in the Air. This is the front. This is the back. This one, I think I've told you guys that I ended up finding a handful of white label promos, and this one here, mint condition on a white label Epic. The only thing wrong with it is my inner sleeve is split. But I have to tell you, I'm kind of neat about this. I never saw this album before, out of all the 35 years that I've collected. Um, but with this one here, your suspects this time, like I said, 1979, Luther Vandross, a couple of members of the Rascals, and all right, this. Like I said, I'm gonna have to tell three sides of the coin. This, if they don't know this already, the Kiss website show. Felix Cavalier, before he did this album, was in a band called Treasure. Treasure in 1977, 78, I want to say roughly, on Epic. Okay. Um, the One of the main band members was Vinny Cassano. Okay. Vinny Cassano shows up on 3 tracks of this album, which I can't wait to listen to this. One of them, in fact, he does an electric guitar solo. But Vinny Cassano, nobody knew who he was in the 70s. But guess what? By 1982, people would know who he was because he changed his name, courtesy of Gene Simmons, to Vinnie Vincent, because that's who Vinny Cassano is Vinnie Vincent from Kiss. So this predates Kiss by about 3 years. But like I said, I was led to believe that Vinny Cassano's musician tenureship just was with that Treasure LP, which, believe it or not, is highly collectible for Vinnie Vincent fans and Kiss fans. Well, just to let you know, in case you don't know, this particular album here has 3 tracks with Vinnie on them too. So if you are a Vinnie Vincent / Kiss collector, you may want to try to snag this album too. Like I said, from 1979 on that. Now, these last 2 albums here of this particular episode touch on a history I want to talk about. I'll show you the albums first, and then we'll talk about this, okay? Remember I said in the last episode that I ended up finding a couple quad albums, all right? Quadraphonic albums. The thing is that they put out a decent amount of titles over the years. And even the ones that you really don't get into, you still may want to snag them because they do have some market value. Even if it's something that's not your bag, you can always use them as trading material, which is what I'm planning on maybe doing with this. I mean, I'll listen to them, but I probably am not going to snag, to keep these. But I found Quad Johnny Mathis in person. This one here is a 2 album. It's a gatefold. Okay. This one here, of course, from 1973. Now it says on the front, it says, the Columbia SQ disc, when played through SQ quadraphonic systems, will provide the unique experience of fine quadraphonic separation and the all-around sound presence of 4-channel listening. This disc may also be played through any conventional stereo system as any other high-fidelity stereo recording, okay? So that's the first one. The second one, yeah, here we go. This one's a single disc this time, and it says the same stuff on the front, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But in quad, Andy Williams, love theme from The Godfather. Speak softly, love. Yeah, go figure, right? There's the front, there's the back. That once again, like I said, this is an SQ. This one was put out in 1972. Now, if you've never seen the labels, I'll show you this one, because the Mathis one's the same label. But it's gold, okay? And it's going to say Columbia around there. Now, I want to touch briefly on the history of quad records and quad sound, if that's all right with you. So some people are going to know about this, some people won't. So let's go off and start here now. All this information I compiled from Wikipedia, okay, and a little bit of my own experience combined. Originally, though, what you've got for your quad sound, I'm reading off of some cheat sheets here, yeah, I'll admit it. Basically, what quadraphonic sounds is, it's 4-speaker sound, okay? Most of the time you put them in each corner of the room. to what now would be called today 4.0 surround sound. That's what it would be equivalent to back then, okay? It started out with a system called Q4, which was quad reel-to-reel systems back in 1969. All right, so your technology started roughly around that time. Now I don't know in '69 what albums were put onto reel-to-reel for the Q4 system, but maybe that's something you guys can look up on your own. RCA in 1970 created the quad 8-track, and they kept running those, and other companies as well. Most of the labels pretty much killed that concept by 1976, but there has been some quad 8 tracks that were found and were made as late as early 1978. So that could be half interesting too. I'm led to believe there are several websites for quad 8 track listings, and I would suggest to go to look for that to see if some of your favorite albums were put there. The QS system from Sansui Electronics debuted in early 1971. That was the first vinyl quad system for quadraphonic. Your second one was called SQ. Gee, how clever, right? They just flipped the letters. Developed by Columbia Records and Sony of Japan. Also came out in early 1971. Now, there was a third system, and the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because for import collectors, okay, it was CD4 or, no, excuse me, I'm getting my stuff mixed up here. The third system was CD4 or Quadra Disc, which was created by JVC/RCA America. That came out in mid-1972. The fourth one was the one that was UK, Europe, and Japan, and it's called UD4/UMX, and that was created by Nippon/Columbia Denon Corporation, and that was a hybrid system that only about 35 to 40 records were ever really made in that format, and of course were released in those regions. Quad radio, yeah, you had quad radio. Actually, it says here, kind of cool, the first concert, July 1974, Cliff Richard for the BBC. There also was a U.S. syndicated show called Double Exposure in the 1970s that was jazz. There was jazz, rock, and pop, and had been released. Their music was already released in quad, and basically it was a showcase for those current records that were in a quad format, so people could go off and buy them. Now, a quick little trivia note: Pink Floyd in 1967 was the first band to have surround sound concert at the Games for May in London. So I think that's pretty neat about the whole quad stuff. I happen to have some quad rock albums. Paranoid from Black Sabbath, Storm Bringer from Deep Purple, Free for All for Ted Nugent. That's just some of the examples. Apple Records made a couple quad albums for solo Beatles stuff, but just in quad 8 tracks. So you're going to have to try to hunt those down. Really quick shout outs here. Wax Museum with Ronnie Dark. Subscribe to him on Facebook and like him Sunday night, 6 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, followed by Night Owl Lunch with Mike Adams from 9 to 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. Like them both on Facebook and listen religiously on Sundays. Thrifty Music Collectors Group, Tim Smith and Company, Shindig Magazine, YouTube Vinyl Community. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Panique's 1960 and Trish Mullins. You two have been there quite some time. I love you guys. I really, really do. I love my regulars and I love my long timers. Everybody, take care. God bless. Rock on. And I'll see you next week for the final chapter of the Suitcase Find of the 70s.